Before we get started with our presentation, I'd love to find out a little bit more about who's with us this morning. I'm interested in just having you all, if you would, use the chat to just blast out in rapid fire where you are now. Are you in school? Are you in a high school or a college setting, or are you on the job somewhere in particular? If you could give us some combination of that answer just in the next minute or so we can kind of do a quick blast to kind of figure out where you are right now. And then I'm going to ask you another question in a second. So go ahead and use the chat and let us know that, and we'll just read that back a little bit. Okay. I'm going to try to do a little tally too. If y'all would continue to just give me your whereabouts. Okay.
And I might add that if you are looking for a career and you're not in high school or college and you're just kind of in the job market, you can put that in there too.
All right, so far we're getting a preponderance of college students. That's great. Terrific. We'll take just a few more seconds to let some of the rest of you let us know where you are right now. Great, great. Excellent, Johnny. All right. All right, next question. Excellent, okay, great. So we have a combination so far from what I'm seeing, and we are on one screen right now, but we're about to go to two screens as soon as our 26th person gets here. The next question I have, it sounds like we've got a lot of college students and some folks who are already well on their way in some RN programs, and we do have a high school senior and probably a few others as well. Next question, and use the chat for this as well. What would you characterize right now as your destination? If we're talking about highways, as we will in this next hour, what's your destination? Because we're going to help you tell how we're going to have to tell you how to get there. But where would you see yourself? As I'm sure you've been asked a few times in your life, let me be the next person to ask this. Where would you see yourself in 5 years or so? And what is your real dream in terms of getting involved in a healthcare career? Go ahead and use the chat for that. And don't be shy. We'll just get a bunch in front of us. Thanks. Hospice nurse, RN, med school, clinical research, primary care provider, surgeon, anesthesiologist, PTPA. This is great. Yeah, let's get a couple more. We figured we'd have a wide array here. LPN, eventually BSN, GP. Fantastic. RN. Oh, this is great. This is perfect. You're in the right place for the next 3 days and for the next hour too. All right. Well, keep those now. Keep the chat open for yourself as questions arise. We're going to leave plenty of time for discussion. We have some special guests with us who are not on the speaking platform with Becky and Hutt and myself, but we were just joined actually by our interim dean of health sciences at Rappahannock Community College, Ellen Kaler, who's kind enough to have her camera on. So Ellen, you can wave. And she's going to be our expert on the side here as questions arise, because she's intimately involved in all of the fields that we'll be talking about. But we wanted to kind of give an overview as the first sort of speakers of the symposium about the and you can go ahead, Becky, I think probably and go up with our title slide, because we're going to introduce you to kind of the metaphor that we're going to be using at least for our hour. And I think it's going to come across for the entire time that you're at the symposium, as you just heard from our opening introduction. We're going to talk about this in terms of health science highways and career opportunities. And, you know, we chose that metaphor, if you will, carefully, because you hear a lot about talent pipelines. I hear that phrase a lot in a lot of different fields. Pipelines. Well, you know, that's fine, and that's all well and good, but being a part of a pipeline makes it sound like you're sort of just a passive, you know, body that's being carried through a pipeline to some other destination, and you don't have a lot to do with where you end up. You know, you're like oil going through a pipeline from one place to another. And I'm not even sure I love pathways as much as I like highways, because highways really suggests a lot. And it's particularly good for healthcare careers, because it suggests that you have in your hands the responsibility to figure out how you're going to get on the highway and where you're going to get off and when you're going to get back on. So those of you, most of you, it sounds like, are drivers already. I don't think we have anybody quite yet who's, we might have a few who are, we know we've got some 14 and 15-year-olds signed up for the symposium. So we may have a few for whom some of these driving metaphors we're going to give you may not be entirely familiar yet. But I think for most of you, those of you who are unfortunately still having to drive with $5 a gallon gas, we kind of know what it's like to get on and off of a highway. So we really would prefer to use that metaphor for our time with you, because it puts you in the driver's seat. You've got the steering wheel, you've got the brake, you've got the accelerator. You've got the responsibility to get that $5 a gallon gas, unfortunately, and you got to figure out how to make sure that you're maintaining your vehicle, which is you and your whole self, making sure that you're keeping up your mental health and everything else as you go through all of these kinds of journeys on your way to health science careers. And so we really like that as well, or better than a pathway, or certainly better than a pipeline, really, because it puts you in charge. And why this highway, or why this set of highways? You all probably know. If you don't, I'll certainly, you know, point out kind of a little bit about the big picture to you. Critical shortages in healthcare for our society, unprecedented, really. And behind that are just a couple of points about demographics. And I'm sure you're aware of this, but I speak as somebody who's kind of on the young end of the baby boom, let's put it that way. So you know about the baby boom, basically anybody born from 1945 to 1964, okay? So guilty as charged. I'm a young baby boomer, which makes me an old person. So anyway, you know, roughly 58 to 77 years old, okay? That's the biggest clump of the population still that's out there. And we're all getting older, and we're all getting more and more in need of healthcare all the time. Put another way, if you look at the 65 and older population in 1950 in this country, 8% of the population was 65 and older. In the 2020 census, 16.9% was 65 and older. And that's only going to go up because people are living longer, and there's more of us to come behind the older baby boomers who are already 65 and older, okay? And you also may know that on your end of the spectrum, since we're talking mostly, it sounds like, to people high school and college age and in their 20s, there are going to be fewer and fewer of you coming along. And as much as the population grew from 2010 to 2020, when the census results came out in 2020, the population under 18 had declined, okay? There were fewer people under the age of 18 in 2020 than there were in 2020 than there were in 2010. So the actual population of high school age students is declining, and that scares us, those of us who are getting old and in need of healthcare. So please know how much we need you all to step up and be a part of the health science workforce in the next several years, and know also, as you'll be told many times in the next 3 days, how much in demand you are and how much of a, shall we say, employees market it is. So if you have skills that are marketable, you're going to be in a better bargaining position going into healthcare than you've ever been in. And it's always been a good field to be in. And as I'm sure Dean Kaler will tell you, it's also getting harder and harder for those of us in the healthcare education field to manage to keep our faculty, because of course, to become a teacher in healthcare, that's another pathway that we would, or a highway or an off ramp that we would love to make available to you and to make sure you know about. But it's also really hard for us to recruit and retain nursing faculty of all kinds because there are so many jobs out there in industry. So let me just take you through a few ideas about this highway that we want to kind of set in front of you, and then we'll move on to a couple of other more detailed paths and adventures that Becky and Hutt will take you through. So just know that you can reset your GPS and reroute if needed. There's a lot of opportunities to, as some of you said in the chat, to do things for a little while that gets you a nice living wage, and then also be still training to make the next move and the next off ramp. So you can plan for one destination for now. You can take it one step at a time. Virtually everything in healthcare, if you have the right kind of navigators, helping you on this journey, and if you choose the right kinds of institutions, you can often stack one credential right on top of another and move on at your pace. So plan ahead, don't run out of gas, and be sure to schedule your routine maintenance. So here are a couple of examples in the next slide. When you've got that GPS, the one thing that we would want you to come out of these 3 days with is a little bit more of an idea about where you're going. And some of you have a very clear idea, and you should be able to fill in some of those stops along the way using the navigation system that we're going to try to give you. So a couple of big questions to get real about this and get out of the metaphor for a second. You'll get to know from some of the clinicals and some of the field work that you do along the way in your education where you're most comfortable working. And it's a big difference between being in a hospital setting, a clinic setting, an office setting, home setting, or increasingly on the road. I mean, travel nurses, things like that. That's another whole kind of way of getting into this business. And I would add to that, even as I said earlier, being in an educational setting and considering whether you want to go at this from that angle and say, you know what, I do want to train the next generation of healthcare workers with the expertise that I've earned from what I've done. So we would certainly say, do you want to be in a high school or college setting? What are your interests? So who do you really want to have around you every day on this journey or at this destination? Where are you going? And are you going to a setting where you're going to like the people that you're spending time with and feel really rewarded by it? So, and sometimes it's not about, there's so many healthcare careers that don't actually involve, clinical, direct patient care, but you can still contribute mightily to the profession by working behind the scenes in administration, listen, every hospital, every clinic, certainly every retirement community that has a healthcare component to it. These are places, that's why we have a picture up here of some folks actually, building behind the scenes. There's always construction going on behind the scenes. So you'll be joined by people who probably aren't at this symposium because they never thought that they were going to be going into healthcare, but they'll end up in healthcare. And some of you may choose to get off the on-ramp and say, you know what, I'd rather work in information or IT or equipment or everything up and down the line, because like I say, hospital settings, clinic settings are only going to explode over the next couple of decades when it comes to all of us old folks. And that's the big kind of fork in the road, if you will, that I think you'll get a real good sense of the moment you kind of get out of the classroom and into a clinical setting is what kind of clinical setting, what do you find you're best at? Your good faculty will pay very close attention to you and ask you to pay very close attention to yourself and your own likes and dislikes and your own talents, and they'll be able to guide you on where you might want to work, if it is even in a clinical setting. And they'll tell you that it doesn't mean you have to leave the health profession entirely if a clinical setting, if direct patient care is not for you. There's a lot of other ways you can contribute. So, to kind of sum up, you can certainly enter it at any junction. And here's the thing: you probably don't want to enter a highway, a super highway, at 10 miles an hour. You know, you don't want to be that person that's like creeping along, right? You want to have a little momentum, right, before you get on the next stage of your journey. You also don't probably want to go at 70, but there are some ways to prepare for that merge onto the next stage of the highway. And there's a lot of, you'll hear about this later in this hour and throughout the 3 days. There are a lot of points on various health science, healthcare highways, health career highways, where you're on the same road as someone else, and it's kind of a merging of two roads, if you know what I mean. Like in Richmond, you know, I-95 and I-64 are kind of the same highway for a while, and then they go off in different directions. That metaphor applies to things like dual enrollment. If you're in high school, taking advantage of any kind of dual enrollment opportunities you have where you can take college coursework while you're in high school. You'll also hear about co-enrollment, which is more the model where you're in a community college, but you're also already affiliated with the four-year university where you're heading in healthcare. So those are examples where you're moving at a pretty good clip, but safely, because you've merged and then you're about ready to get off that on-ramp later on at a much advanced point from where you were when you started. So the navigators, we call them navigators here at RCC, but whoever in your life is your navigator. It could be a loved one, it could be a family member, it could be just somebody who sponsors you and says, you know, I believe in you. And just make sure you're reaching out. And your faculty, of course, especially in healthcare fields. I've seen the faculty at work in my career. They are some of the most terrific educators I know, because they are really looking at you as the whole person, and they want to make sure that you leave their class ready to be successful and happy in your future. So please lean on them. Don't be shy about that. There are a couple of rules of the road that I'll leave you with before I pass things off to Becky, and that would be, of course, licensing. It's an additional piece that's not in a lot of other professions, you know, and in a lot of other professions, you just get that degree, you're good to go. You know, you put that on your resume, you're hired. There's almost nothing in health science that doesn't also involve, besides courses and you know, a college transcript, that doesn't also involve licensing. And that's what a lot of the instruction is about, especially the classroom instruction, to make sure you're ready to pass various kinds of toll booths along the way, if you want to call them that, and in order to kind of get to the next step that you need to get to. And of course, accreditation is very important as you're shopping for nursing programs in particular. Make sure you are talking to your navigators about making sure that you're actually going to a program that's accredited, that's got the right kinds of preparation for you to pass national licensure exams, and also make sure that, you know, you research your costs, because it's like buying a car, I guess. You know, you got to think about gas mileage, and you know, here's the thing that you got working in your favor. These are such high demand fields that there's a lot of help behind the scenes to get you there in terms of financial aid that's specifically targeted to helping us to solve this healthcare worker shortage that we're facing over the next decade. So like I say, you're in the driver's seat, you've got control. So take advantage of your leverage and your bargaining position as a future talented and credentialed and licensed worker in healthcare. I'll pass it off to you, Becky.
Thank you, Miles, and good morning, everyone. So I'm Becky Morris, and I'm the internship counselor here at Germanna. And one of my favorite things to do is to help students really decide if their thoughts equate to reality, and if they have done enough research into what they think they want to do. So we want to make sure that you are, you know, as Miles said, getting on the right road, going in the right direction, and we want to make sure that you really plan your trip out accordingly. So there's lots of tools out in the world, and because you are the driver of this trip, you should definitely be doing some of your own research. And when you find what you want to do, you can bounce it back off of those navigators or those mentors in your life to make sure that what you think you're seeing and what you think you want to do is what happens in the real world. So we want to make sure that you find the place that you fit the best. These are just a few places that you can look: the Virginia Employment Commission, the Bureau of Labor and Labor Statistics, the Virginia Health Careers Catalog, put out by the Department of Health, and ONET. And I did that backwards on purpose. ONET is my absolute favorite tool in the world. And so I am going to stop sharing the screen and bring up another screen here in just a second. And we're going to do a little bit of research. And so what I have brought up here is ONET, and this is a .org. So it's a nice, safe website that you can use. And this is a great place for you to look for jobs and look for what the real salary looks like, look for what the real training and education looks like, look for what the real tasks you might be doing in this job. So just as an example, I am going to use an EMT. Oops, if I could type, hold on, y'all. Emergency medical tech. And you'll see that whatever I type up here in this, it'll bring up a lot of different choices. And on this results page, you'll see this little sunshine icon that says it's a bright outlook. And if you click on those, it'll tell you that these are expected to grow rapidly. And so there should be a lot of jobs. Now, that's not to say that something without that sunshine icon isn't a good field. It's just these are the ones that are growing the most rapidly and that they have a great future ahead for jobs. So if you wanted to start off and go into be an EMT, you could click on that one, and we're going to go through a couple of these. We won't read the whole page, but it's going to tell you that this is information gathered through census and through the occupational results and research that our country does. And so this will show you the types of tasks that would be expected of an EMT, and it's just going to show you a few, and you could drop it down and see more. And so, for instance, you're going to have to administer first aid, which we all think about. But we also might want to think about some of the other things that you might have to observe and report back to the physician when you get to the clinical setting. You also need some technology skills. Many of us don't really think, oh, I'm going to be an EMT. I don't need to know anything about computers, but in reality, you do. And you need to know about software and how to use this software so that you can be the best EMT possible. Then going into some detailed work activities, you can drill this down and you can see some of the things that you might have to do. You might not think of inventory as part of an EMT job, but this is definitely something you're going to have to know about, and you're going to have to know about the equipment on the truck. So a lot of things to just really drill down and let you see what type of work activities you would do. And here's another favorite part of mine. This is the job zone. And so this particular employment of being an EMT has some preparation needed. Okay. And so it is going to go down through and tell you what type of jobs, what type of skills you might need, where the training might be, and some examples. You can put in your zip code here, and you can find places like Germanna and RCC, and maybe even some of our university partners that can provide the training. And so this might show a list of multiple places you've never heard of before. And so just like we spoke about on the earlier slide, you're going to want to make sure you check into those places and make sure that they are accredited and that they will allow you to get your licensing and things like that. I have a history in finance, and so money is really important to me. I think it's important to everyone. But you can go into this and you can put your zip code in, and I'm just going to grab a random zip code. And you can go in and it's going to tell you that the beginning wages are around 23 for the United States. And then they go up to 28.5 in Virginia. And then, of course, we all know Northern Virginia pays a little more. But this would be your entry with basic skills. Of course, if you're skilled up a little more, your entry pay might be a little bit higher. And then if you hang around long enough, you'll get that middle salary. And then these salaries are closer to retirement or after you've been in the career a while. And so it breaks it down into more details and really gets into the cities. And you can really find out, wow, I think I want to go and move to Richmond and be an EMT. My salary is going to be a little different than, say, if I'm in Bristol, right? So I think this is important for you to do as part of your research so that you know what you might get paid. And then it comes down through and it actually starts to list out some some places where you might branch off onto a new road, onto a new pathway or a highway to go to your next step. Maybe you want to be a licensed LPN, right? Or maybe you want to go in and be a surgical assistant. This would be a nice entryway, a nice road to get you to these other careers. And of course, there's some other information here if you wanted to read up more on some places that talk about EMTs. So I really like ONET. You could do all kinds of different searches here for any job that you're looking for. And if you're not sure what kind of pathway, you could just put healthcare in here and get a host of different things that would let you do your research. So I'm going to stop sharing again. And go back to our PowerPoint. So as I mentioned, these are just some different places you can start your research, and of course, continue to reach out to the navigators in your life so we can help make sure that you're on the right road. Here are some of the educational pathways or on-ramps that you might want to take to get you where you're going. You can do all different things in entry-level nurse's aide, phlebotomist, there's that EMT we just looked at, up to perhaps being a nurse or a nurse practitioner. And then there are some other things that you might not think about necessarily when you think of healthcare. For instance, physical therapy. I think we saw someone who's interested in that. Business management and business administration and IT are also things that you would want to look at. And we would just say that if you're thinking of anything that is not prescribed specifically, like I want to be a nurse, if you're thinking of going into med school or something like that, you really need to talk to the folks like Miles, Hutt, and myself in your world to make sure that we get you into the right on-ramp. Because perhaps if you want to go to med school, you might be doing a transfer degree studying biology at a community college so that you can get into a pre-med track. And so some different types of training that you might pursue, definitely some things in high school. If your high school has any program to help you, your CTE coordinators and dual enrollment, community college co-enrollment. You could go to a four-year school. Community agencies might teach things like CPR certification, or we heard earlier, Mary Washington Healthcare has its own radiology program. And then of course, employer training. So there's lots of different things, credentials you could have to get you on the way to your healthcare field, whether it's a diploma or a certification or a degree. They can go all the way up to your doctorate degree, and we are here to help you find those things. So you want to make sure you talk to us. So Hutt, let's turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hud Williams. I'm the coordinator of dual enrollment, and I definitely identify, I think, with the baby boomers, as I told Becky and Miles. I'm actually sitting here with a busted calf, so I really need some of y'all to hurry up and get on this highway or get off the highway, and so y'all can take care of me. But so I think Becky and Miles has already touched on a lot of this already, and where nurses typically work. And of course, you have the hospital settings, the critical care, as you can see, emergency room, things like that. Doctor's offices, the traveling nurses, as Miles said, is becoming more and more popular. I know a lot of, I was a former school counselor, a lot of former students of mine that are doing the traveling nurse. Seems to be a very appealing right now, be able to see the country. And then of course, home health, hospice, and such. So there's so much diversity and so many choices for students. But again, going back to the other slide, for the younger, for the students that are here, high school or middle school students, can't encourage enough to take advantage of your dual enrollment, even the general education courses, because you will need those in your training, in your college, wherever you attend to get your training. So on this slide is sort of a sample to becoming a nurse. Of course, obviously doing well in high school and having a good GPA is very important. Finishing high school strong, and having the dual enrollment is very important if you have that opportunity. or just taking some courses at your local community college, Germanna, RCC, or whatever community college you're close to, anything that you can sort of get a jump start. But if you have access, or if your high school feeds into a technical center and you can take advantage of some of those entry level on-ramps like the nurse aid or the EMT, the schools that we support here at NRCC, we have EMT, some PN, and some CNA programs. And so I think it's important that you work with your school counselors and career coaches and high school navigators and other folks that can sort of give you some direction. But I think it's important. And then, as you can see, as you move your way through the community college and earn those certificates and degrees, there's going to be opportunities for co-enrollment that was mentioned. Here at RCC, we have a partnership with a couple VCU, ODU, and we're getting ready to have a partnership with Grand Canyon to do some co-enrollment, so you can graduate on Friday with your associate degree and Saturday with your bachelor's degree. So there is a way to, pick up the speed, as Miles alluded to. And then, of course, you have your 4-year university options as well. My wife followed a similar pathway and got her associate degree at Thomas Nelson Community College, and then ODU for a bachelor's, and then VCU for her nurse practitioner. So it's very doable, that's for sure, with proper planning. And you can, the key is to keep the momentum going. And I guess that's it. Next slide. What do we have next? I think that's you, Miles.
So actually, I'm going to pick this one up. So as we've kind of shown you, the options are endless. You can do a lot of different things. You can take a lot of different ways to get to your end destination. You can think you want to stop at an RN and then realize in short order that maybe you want a BSN. You can decide that you want to work in IT and then realize that you have a passion for people in healthcare, and you can take that IT degree into a hospital setting. You can start in one destination and work your way up to a totally different destination. We just want to make sure that you all are aware of the fact that your opportunities really are endless, and you can take a bunch of different ways to get to where you want to go. And we're here to help you stay on the right road. And so we are here to answer your questions, to help give direction. And we are very glad that you all stayed with us this long today. And we hope that you're going to stay engaged and stay on the path for the whole 3 days of our symposium. But right now, we would like to take a pause and see if you all have any questions. So you can put them in the chat. You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can use the little notifications like raising your hand and things like that. All right, so we have no questions at the moment. I would like to ask a question of the group. I would like to know, and you guys can blast it through the chat. Did anybody learn anything new that you didn't know? Did you find out something that you didn't know before you got on with us today? And if so, we would love to know that. You could drop it in the chat, or of course, if you have a question that suddenly comes to your mind, we'd love to hear about that too. Thank you, Cornisha. And as we alluded to, this is recorded, and you all will get a copy of the publication, the digital booklet, and you will have access to all of these, along with the ONET link that you saw and our contact information.
Okay, well, I wanted to just say thank you to all 3 presenters. You all shared some really insightful tips and everything. I learned something new. I didn't know about ONET. that's a cool website to just see different opportunities. And I just actually wrote that down for my sister. And so, but for the participants, I just wanted to let you all know that we do have different types of ways for you all to win gift cards. The 4 participants who attend the most sessions will be randomly selected to win a $50 gift card. And then we have evaluators. 3 participants who complete in the daily evaluation will be randomly selected to win a $50 gift card. I'm putting the link right now in the chat, and we are asking that participants fill that out at least once a day. And then the 3rd way to win a gift card is the scholar. A participant who submits a 500-word essay on their desired career path and explains the educational and professional elements to reach that career goal will have a chance to win a $300 gift card. We ask that the essays be submitted to careerdevelopment@mwhc.com. Adele put that in the chat a little bit earlier. So if you would like to be a participant in that, we ask that those are due on Monday, June 20th. Okay, and so thank you again to our presenters. Our next session is, the topic is volunteerism, and that will start at 9:30.
And I'll put the link for that next session in the chat for easy access.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.